Some other thing that I want to point out, we also found back here in the assignment information. So here in assignment requirements, we need to make sure that all assignment submissions have this README that contains my name, UANet ID, etc. We actually need to put our name and our UANet ID in every single file. So if we look up at the kinds of things that we expect to have inside of a submission, we need to make sure that our name is actually in there. So if our name's not in the file, then we've essentially submitted a file that doesn't have our name in it. So let's go back here to CMake and insert a comment, which we do with the hash. And sprinkle EC275 assignment 0. I'm going to go ahead and put my net ID here as well. So now we're passing -w all. Let's remind ourselves why we do this. Make all warnings as errors to avoid reductions in grade. And then this creates an executable called crow out of file main.c. So I think that settles it for here, but there was one more warning that we were getting due to the CMake minimum version required not being correct. So I'm going to copy this, and now in the root directory I'm going to edit the CMake lists.txt and add exactly that line. So let's go ahead here and put our name, chocolate sprinkle, sprint.jm is my net ID, assignment 0, EC275, OK. Assignment name avoids CMake warnings. So I've made this version 3.0. I'm going to actually change this to version 2.6 so that it'll run with the older versions of CMake in case that's what people have compiled on their machines. So look in this directory for more CMake lists.txt files. All right, so now let's go into the build directory again. And even though I've already run CMake once, I've changed some of the CMake lists before. So I'm going to rerun CMake. And now I don't have any errors or anything. But let's just make sure that there's nothing going on in here. So I'm going to remove all the files in this directory and then rerun CMake again. And I don't have any editor errors at all in terms of my CMake generation. But I also now need to just run CMake again to make sure that, I need to run make now to make sure that everything actually compiles. And it turns out now that I have an error. So the error is that I defined this method called print usage, but then that symbol is not found anywhere. So what this means is that I defined a function called print usage, but then I never implemented that function. So now let's go back down into the source directory and touch a file called print usage.c. So in this function, I'm going to actually implement print usage. And it's not really going to do anything that interesting. It's going to printf exactly what we found inside of the definition of our assignment. Oops, let's go back and find the assignment. So per the assignment, it says if no word is passed in, a usage statement should be printed that prints the 2 paragraphs above, but not this one. So I'm going to copy this and paste it into here. So I'm going to add a new line here. And then another printf here. I'm going to add a tab before printing the crow, another new line here, and now I'm done with my printf statement. Oops. Return 0 for success. So even though I don't really need to, I'm going to go ahead and include standardio.h to include printf information. And now I have this file called printusage.c. So let's go back into our build directory and make one more time. It still has a problem. So I think for a moment, I just need to rerun CMake so that it'll find printusage.c, but it still doesn't know where to find that function. And there's actually a couple of problems here. We're going to solve them all in a row. So let's look now inside the source directory and see what's inside of our CMake lists. Well, we did say that we wanted to use main.c, but we never told it to where to find printusage.c. So now I'm telling the system, look inside of printusage.c for another function. Okay, no problem. So now I'm going to go back into my build directory and run CMake again, and now run make. So now I've linked it. Everything seems happy. Let's see what happens when we run source crow. Error, not enough arguments, printing usage statement. So now we have this program that echoes a word differently depending on the word that is passed in. So we seem to be doing pretty well here. And now we're just printing out, checking for the correct number of parameters, error, not enough arguments. Let's see what happens when we run just word, looking for correct number of parameters, correct list of arguments, now checking for special words. So we're getting closer and closer to being done with our project here. Now a couple of things to note is that one, I didn't implement the entire program and then try to build it. I implemented some small piece of it, and then I thought, let's check to make sure that it will build now. Now it's easier for me to go in and replace these printf statements with the actual behaviors that we're performing there. So back in our source directory, we can see that we have a couple files here in the CMake lists. What I don't like about this is that it's becoming a little bit unwieldy in terms of size. So I want to stop using the command line and instead use Xcode to make my system. So I'm going to make dir build Xcode, and then CMake with a generator for Xcode. So this is going to generate an Xcode project instead of a Makefiles project, and allow me to take advantage of all the really nice editorial features that come with Xcode. So everything seems to be done here. I'm going to go ahead and open assignment 0.xcode project. By the way, this assignment 0 here comes from the name of the assignment that we provided as our project name. So it's taken a few moments for all the files to come up here. Let's take this now and adjust it to the correct screen size. This may be a little bit difficult to visualize. I hope it's not too much though. So now inside of the crow we have main.c and printusage.c. So checking for a correct number of parameters, collect list of arguments. Let's start replacing these things with what we expect to do. I equals to 1, I less than arg c, I plus plus. Now we're going to printf %s, and then with a new line, and we're going to pass along arg v sub I. So it's going to complain because I isn't actually declared as an integer. Say and I equals 0 up here. So now I should be declared. Now it's going to print off each one of these remaining arguments one by one with a new line in between them. So let's build it and make sure that it still builds correctly. Success. All right. And so now I've taken care of echoing all remaining arguments. I'm going to uncopy this. And in fact, I may decide later that instead of having a new line here, I'll just put a space between each one of these and have a new line at the very end. So not enough arguments printing a usage statement. I don't need to have a comment anymore talking about that. I'm going to use C style comments instead of C++ style here. And so now it's just asking me to check special words. So there are only two cases that we're worried about here. So we're checking to see if the string comparison between argv element 1 and snow is equal to 0, or if the string comparison of argv sub 1 and corn is equal to 0. So if either of these two things are true, then it turns out that we need to have a special way that we echo. So here we want it to say, corn, the bird said, corn, corn. So we'll go back and copy that into Xcode. And we'll actually need to put a printf here. And instead of regular quote, I have to put these little brackets around the quotes. And one thing that I probably should have noticed in the program here is that I changed the case of corn. So in fact, I'm not going to be able to control the case, and so all of them are going to be whatever is passed in. But here we need to provide argv1, argv1, and argv1, since we use the same word all three times. So whether it's snow or corn, this should work both ways. It's probably telling me here with this warning that it doesn't know about the strcomp function. Yeah, implicitly declaring library strcomp, etc. is not going to work. So I need to include a library, probably string.h. See if the warning goes away when I do that. Yep, it sure does. So before I get too much into checking whether everything seems to be correct now, I'm just going to go run back and determine whether or not the system actually still compiles. So let's go back into our build directory and remake it and run source crow with snow. So now we have snow, the bird said, snow, snow. So that seems to be working. If I provide it with a lowercase s, it doesn't match. So we seem to have everything going correctly for us there. We have a couple of printfs that we can now get rid of. So let's go back and do that. So checking for correct number of parameters. We no longer need this. We're going to remove that one. We have our correct list of arguments. So let's get rid of this. There's one more thing that I've forgotten to do. I do check to see if it's a special word, but if it's not a special word, I still need to echo it back out. So here, printf %s with the new line argv1. So now I think we basically have a fully functioning program with one problem here that I do not have my name in this file. Okay, so now things seems to be looking up. I think we've got it correct, but we still have to do a test to make sure that our system seems to be running as we expect it to. But everything seems to build. We'll come back here and make again, and everything seems to be fine. I'm going to check and see what happens if I actually didn't correct that other warning. So I'm going to comment out string.h, which is going to give me this warning right here. If I go back now here and make, I get this really obvious warning here that shows up that something is wrong. So that's not great. Let's go back and uncomment this. There are other things we can do to make warnings happen, like I can declare an integer j and never assign it or use it. So this will create a warning. If I come back here and make again now I get this build problem that I have an unused variable j. So these are the kinds of things you want to avoid when designing your code. All right, so we have a whole bunch of comments. We have a whole bunch of behaviors. Let's go back to our command line and run source crow with a couple of different examples. So crow doesn't seem to behave correctly, and I'm not sure why. So let's go back and look at why it's not behaving correctly. Oh, because crow is not one of the special words. So let's go back and run snow. So we get the correct behavior for that, the correct behavior for corn, the correct behavior for lots of corns in a row. What happens if we provide a capital C for this corn? Will it print that one? Nope. What if I put them all in a bunch of quotes? So now we just print them all out again correctly. What if I print just corn inside of quotes? Aha! Now we see that if we provide it in quotes, it seems to behave in a strange way, but this is actually correct. We just provided one word here, and it passed that word in with no quote on the inside here. So this is a feature of passing something in on the command line with quotes, that if it's only one word, it strips the quotes off before it passes it in. And if we provide no command line parameters at all, we get just that out. So now our system seems to be behaving correctly, and we have now left over a couple of directories that we want to do something with. So for the next part of the video, I'm going to show how to go from an assignment that we think we've completed to actually submitting it for our homework.